Most people think authentication is just logging in, but a single mistake in authentication has taken down billion-dollar companies. In this video, we are going to perform tech autopsy and dissect authentication and authorization from ground up, so you never confuse OAuth, JWT, or SSO ever again. Welcome to Tech Autopsy. Authentication and authorization are foundational to every secure system, from web app to cloud platform and Kubernetes. In this video, we will deeply understand how identity is verified, how access is controlled, what different authentication methods exist, and when to use each one correctly. Think of an office building. When the security guard checks your ID, that's authentication, proving who you are. When your access badge allows or denies entry to certain floors, that's authorization. These are related but fundamentally different concepts. Authentication answers the question who you are, and authorization answers what are you allowed to do. So, authentication always comes first. Without identity, access control has no meaning. Why authentication matters? Most security breaches start with authentication failure. Weak password, leaked token, or missing validation allows attackers to impersonate legitimate user or services. Once identity is compromised, authorization rules are bypassed completely. Credentials are proofs of identity, like password, keys, or certificate. Token represent authenticated identity in subsequent request. Identity provider verifies user and issues credentials. Access control decide what authenticated identities can do. One of the most important distinction in system design is between human and machine authentication. Human authenticate using password, MFA, and SSO. Machine authenticate using token, certificate, or cryptographic proof. Treating machines like human is a common and dangerous mistake. Basically, there are four types of authentication method commonly used. First is password-based authentication. Password-based authentication is the most common method. The user submits a username and password which the server verifies against the stored credential. Basic authentication sends credential on every request and must always be protected by TLS. Form-based login improves security by using session instead of repeated credential exchange. The pros of this approach is first, simple to implement, that is, requires only a database and hash verification. No external dependencies or protocols. Second, familiar to users. Users already understand password, low onboarding friction. Third, universally supported, that is, work across browser devices or protocols. The cons of this approach are first, vulnerable to phishing. Password is directly reusable by attackers. No proof of possession beyond knowledge. Second, password reuse risk. Breach in one system compromises others. Third, weak security chosen by user. Human optimize for memorability, not entropy. Fourth, poor fit for machines. Password rotation and storage for services is unsafe. The second type of authentication is token-based authentication. Token-based authentication replaces password with tokens. After authentication, the server issues a token that represents the user or service. Each request includes this token, usually as a bearer token. The server validates this token instead of credentials. The pros of this approach are first, stateless and scalable. That is, server doesn't need session storage. Second, decouples authentication from request. Third, works well for APIs. That is, token can represent user or service. Cons of this approach are first, token theft equals impersonation. Second, requires strict expiration and rotation. That is, long-lived token increase blast radius. Third, validation complexity. That is, signature audience expiry must be checked. Third type of authentication method is certificate-based authentication. Certificate-based authentication uses cryptographic proof instead of shared secrets. The client proves possession of a private key corresponding to a trusted certificates. In mutual TLS, both client and server authenticate each other using TLS handshake. This is commonly used for internal service to service communication. Pros of this approach is strong cryptographic identity proof, no shared secret, built-in TLS. The con of this approach are operational complexity, certificate lifecycle management, harder debugging. This is where most confusion happens. OAuth doesn't authenticate user, it delegates access. OpenID Connect add authentication on top of OAuth. JWT is just a token format. It doesn't provide security by itself. Understanding this distinction prevents major decision mistake. The fourth type of authentication method is federated authentication and SSO. Federated authentication allows users to authenticate using a trusted external provider. Single sign-on means user authenticate once and access multiple systems without relogging. Technologies like OpenID Connect, SAML enables this experience. The pros of this approach are centralized identity management, reduced password exposure, better user experience. The con of this approach are dependency on identity provider, higher setup complexity, larger blast radius. When a user clicks login with Google, Google authenticate the user. The application trusts Google identity and receives a token. The user's password is never stored with the application. This is federated authentication in action. Why OAuth exists? Allows limited access without sharing credentials, enable third-party integration securely. Why OAuth can be misused? Incorrect token validation, confusing OAuth for authentication. What are the security best practices? Always enhance strong password and multi-factor authentication for humans. Use short-lived access token and rotate credentials regularly. Encrypt all communication using TLS. Always validate tokens, never blindly trust them. MFA adds a second independent factor. It protects against stolen password. Short-lived token. Limited damage if token is stolen. TLS everywhere. It prevents interception and replay. Monitoring and audits. It detects abuse before impact escalates. Use password-based authentication for basic human login. Use token-based auth for APIs. Use certificates for internal services. Use OAuth and OpenID Connect for delegated identity and SSO. Authentication proves identity. Authorization controls access. So, if authentication ever felt confusing, that's not your fault. Most explanation skips the fundamental. On tech autopsy, we don't memorize definition, we dissect system until they make sense. If this video helped you, please subscribe because in the next video, we will break down how JWT actually works internally and why just using HTTPS is not enough. This is Tech Autopsy, where we perform deep technical breakdowns. Thank you.